Welcome, everyone. We are so grateful to have you with us for our first Seaweed session during Seaweed Days from all over the world. This is so wonderful. My name is Erin, and I'm the Manager of Communications and Engagement at Cascadia Seaweed, and I'm pleased to be your host for this session. I'll ask that you keep your cameras off and stay muted during the presentation today, but if you have questions at all at any time during the presentation, please feel free to message the host and we'll get to as many questions as we can at the end during our question and answer period. Today's session is all about the South Australian seaweed industry, and they have a very special announcement to share with us today. I'd like to take a moment and tell you a little bit about each of the sponsors, and then we'll dive into their presentation. We have Rhonda Vincent, who is the Business Development Manager in the Department of Trade and Investment for the South Australian Government. Rhonda has a diverse background in financial services, retail management, and fashion design. She enjoys connecting people and developing solutions that provide positive outcomes for food, wine, and agribusinesses in South Australia. We also have Dr. Adam Main from CH4 Global. Dr. Main has over 20 years of deep experience in the aquaculture world and is an experienced CEO and general manager. Prior to joining CH4 Global, Adam was general manager of aquaculture at Pirza. Adam, is that right? Pirza, yeah, great. Where he was responsible for leading the operational and strategic directions of the aquaculture policy planning and environmental group. Previous to Pirza, Adam was the longest running CEO of the Tasmanian Salmonoid Growers Association. Before the Salmonoid Growers Association, Adam worked at the executive level with the Department of Education, Employment and Workplace Relations, and as a divisional manager for Greening Australia. Adam is also a past director on the boards for the National Aquaculture Council, the Tasmanian Aquaculture Council, and Seafood Training Tasmania. Wow, Adam, I think you should be the host of this session. Academically, Adam completed a double major degree in marine biology and natural resource management and holds a PhD in the field of community ecology. I would also like to welcome Dr. Sashi Nair. Dr. Nair leads an algal production group and manages the Sardi Aquatic Sciences Environment and Analytical Laboratories located at the Aquatic Sciences Division of the South Australian Research and Development Institute. We're calling it SARDI. Have I pronounced that correctly? Yes, good. He manages the diverse applied industry focused on research programming of the group, besides analytical and algal biomass production services of the facility. He provides scientific and technical advice to government and industry for sustainable development of the algal biomass industry. He was instrumental in securing $7 million from the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Strategy for SEAL, a state-of-the-art commercial analytical facility. Since its inception in 2006, the Algal Production Group has been developing and optimizing cultivation technologies funded by the industry for a wide range of marine microalgal and macroalgal taxa with diverse applications such as bioremediation of industrial and domestic effluents, as well as production of high-quality algal biomass for bioreactive compounds, nutraceuticals, cosmeceuticals, functional food and food products, and aquaculture feed. More recently, the group has developed a strong collaborative relationship with Adam's group at CH4 in developing cultivation systems for sustainable production of the red seaweed Asparagopsis as a livestock supplement with the broader goal of mitigating methane emissions from livestock. Welcome to our panelists today. I turn it over to Rhonda to share her presentation with us.
Thanks, Erin, and welcome from South Australia. We come from the future. It's Tuesday morning here, so we'll let you know what it's like. So I'm delighted to be here with you this Tuesday morning, and today we'd like to share about one of South Australia's newest industries and the commercialisation of seaweed. In this session, we're going to introduce you to the key participants in South Australia's emerging seaweed industries and discuss what opportunities that there are for collaboration with established global seaweed businesses, such as those that are already in Canada. But before we talk about seaweed, I'd just like to set the scene with a short video about South Australia, and so you can get an idea of our state and the type of ecosystems that we have here. So bear with me while I share my screen.
South Australia is growing, and you're invited to grow with us. Our state boasts a strong and vibrant ecosystem where exciting work opportunities are balanced with an abundance of lifestyle activities. Investors can maximise their returns with our competitive labour and property costs and valuable taxation benefits. All supported by a business-minded, pro-growth government delivering what industry wants. We pride ourselves on our ability to develop world-first innovations and future-focused industries like space, machine learning, cybersecurity, biotech, defence, renewable energy and agtech, and with dedicated state-of-the-art innovation precincts such as Lot 14 and Tonsley, we're attracting some of the world's best talent. Now globally connected, Adelaide boasts world-class digital infrastructure and expanded international gateways located just 20 minutes from the city. Ongoing improvements in transport links mean we have some of Australia's fastest commute times. And with a strong pipeline of infrastructure projects, businesses will be well served. South Australia is growing, and thanks to decisive leadership and a community effort towards COVID-19, our city is now also one of the world's safest. Our government acted swiftly to protect the health of our people, while launching a raft of initiatives to shield local businesses. As a result, we have some of the lowest COVID-19 case numbers globally. With renewed energy, resilience and a fresh spark of creativity, South Australia is the way to grow. So join the companies already investing in South Australia. It's time for a southern shift.
So the government of South Australia is prioritising further increasing our capacity to add value to our exceptional natural resources and primary assets, including our unique seaweed assets. So the exciting thing about this is that South Australia has got an abundance of natural seaweeds, 60% of which are natives, and we have some 1,500 species. So how does the Department for Trade and Investment help companies that are growing seaweed elsewhere in the world come to South Australia to grow seaweed? Well, we'll show you really a case study today of how that's done. And really, we start off with our wonderful colleagues at SARDI, who will present in the next session. And they have extensive research experience and are helping companies to find out what the capabilities of those species of seaweed and what that means to the world. So there's things that are undiscovered there. So we also have a government in South Australia, which is a key first mover in passing the required legislation to scale production, which allows vast ocean leases specifically for seaweed and aquaculture. And in addition to exporting, we're eager to speak and attract businesses from around the world to expand their operations into South Australia and help commercialise and ultimately sustainably produce at scale the myriad of value-added products derived from seaweed, such as pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, food for human consumption, animal feed, fertiliser, as well as enabling equipment and ag tech for production. Much of the recent commercial interest has been sparked by the discovery that a group of native South Australian seaweeds, Asparagopsis, can be used to produce a feed supplement that the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation here in Australia, known as CSIRO here, has demonstrates reduces methane production in ruminants by up to 90%. So there's currently no large-scale commercial cultivation of this seaweed anywhere in the world. And this represents the single biggest opportunity for rapid industry growth. And there's now a global race to begin large-scale cultivation of Asparagopsis. You'll hear more about that from CH4 in their session. So companies that expand to South Australia can benefit from our other competitive advantages like strong biosecurity frameworks and traceability, and our global leadership in circular economy initiatives. And of course, our world-leading renewable energy generation, which is already 60% from wind and solar and expected to be 90% by 2025. South Australia is home to the greatest concentration of agriculture research in the Southern Hemisphere at our globally recognised institutions. The Department for Trade and Investment assists international businesses to establish their business or invest in South Australian companies that give them a global competitive advantage. With the world changing and as economies adjust to new opportunities, threats, and unforeseen shocks, we all need to evolve and respond to ensure we remain competitive and focused on achieving our global growth ambitions. In particular, supply chain disruption is impacting on the ability to get products to global markets. So it's essential to review logistics in conjunction with production and manufacturing opportunities closer to target markets. South Australia provides easy access, especially to Asia Pacific countries, where Australia's reputation for safety and quality is strong, and we have a series of valuable free trade agreements we can leverage. Our state is located on the southern coast in the middle of Australia, so it can service both east and west coast domestic markets in addition to exporting. So how can we help? Government is often a faceless beast that makes it difficult to connect with a person that can actually do anything for you. So our department operates by a no wrong door policy. So no matter who you approach, you can get the help you need anywhere in the Australian government. This is particularly important when you're unable to jump on a plane like you used to be able to do pre-COVID, right? So our case management service helps international companies with all aspects of establishing a business in South Australia, from identifying sites to strategic partnerships here in South Australia, from identifying new markets to accessing those markets. There is also some financial support available to help set up in South Australia. In fact, CH4 South Australia was established exactly this way and is a great example of how the Department for Trade and Investment can help. The South Australian Landing Pad has been established to support companies looking to make their first investment in the Australian Pacific region and Australia or South Australia, while helping to stimulate the local economy, create jobs and grow new industries such as seaweed. The program's available with support of up to 80,000 Australian dollars over 12 months based on the business case presented. The South Australian Landing Pad offers support and assistance in the three key areas most important when establishing in a new jurisdiction, including accommodation expenses, setup and establishment costs, and of course, case management to help you navigate, network, and participate in the local ecosystem. The program welcomes all stages of growth except seed stage companies, such as early stage and scale up companies that have raised capital and are looking for a cost-effective environment to set up their business, SMEs with global customers, partners, and often strong investor support looking to establish a presence in the Australia Asian Pacific region, and larger companies that would like to invest in a test presence before making a larger commitment. Registrations will be assessed on a competitive merit-based process, and applications are by invitation only. So I invite you to reach out after this session to have a chat about what your situation might be if you're interested in South Australia after you've seen the awesome work that we're doing here. Now I'd like to hand over to Sashi from the Sardi Seaweed R&D team to share in more depth about the industry and what are some of the opportunities for collaboration and growth.
Thank you, Rhonda, and very good morning to each one of you today. A very special occasion, but before we start, I would like to introduce you to our very strong collaborative partner, Clinton, who is the CEO of the Narangga Nation's Aboriginal Corporation, with whom we work very closely. As Erin introduced earlier, I'm part of, I work for the South Australian Research and Development Institute. We are an R&D Institute of the South Australian Government under the Department of Primary Industries and Regions, PIRSA. Our primary focus is to assist primary producers with specific R&D issues and taking it to commercialization and answering those questions. Whilst we are a state government entity, a large percentage of our funding comes from industry, which means we are not bound by national jurisdiction or state jurisdiction and have the freedom to operate in other jurisdictions around the world. As a result, we have undertaken projects with companies in Japan, Canada, United States, including the Department of Defense in the United States and many other countries. So we have a very strong focus on industry development. And one of the main industries, so Sardi has about 600 odd researchers in various aspects of primary industry, servicing various aspects of primary industries that includes livestock farming, sustainable farming, viticulture, and also a very large focus on aquatic sciences. I'm part of the aquatic sciences team with a focus on aquaculture. Aquaculture is a large growing industry in South Australia and a very sustainable one in that respect. All the aquaculture species that are produced commercially in South Australia, especially tuna, is done in a very sustainable manner. The next video will highlight the importance of aquaculture in the state's economy. Rhonda, can you play?
Australia's vast coastline borders the pure and rich Southern Ocean. Australians love their coastal lifestyle with beaches that are the envy of the world. Australia has a long history of producing quality seafood. The energy and innovation of Australia's seafood industry has been invigorated by immigrants from other countries. Seafood production in South Australia amounts to more than 60,000 tonnes each year. The demand for seafood is growing with the world's appetite, but production from capture fisheries has levelled off. Aquaculture is an industry for the future. South Australia, with its pristine waters and a very low population, is the ideal location for the farming of premium seafood. South Australia's aquaculture industry has developed a world-class reputation for environmental sustainability and is promising to become one of Australia's major primary industries. The rapid growth in sustainable aquaculture has been developed through the ingenuity and creativity of the pioneers of the industry and the support and cooperation of state government agencies and some of the world's best marine researchers. Research is a key element of South Australia's effort to continually improve the responsible planning and management of aquaculture. With the Fisheries Research and Development Corporation, the government has been working on a suite of research initiatives titled Innovative Solutions. These projects have supported economic growth and propelled South Australia's position as the leading national producer of aquaculture products. South Australia's aquaculture sectors include a diversity of valuable seafood products. The tuna industry was developed in the early 90s based on a strict quota of wild-caught juvenile tuna brought to the safe waters of Port Lincoln, where they're fed and conditioned with incredible care over a period of months and processed for export. The southern bluefin tuna is considered the ultimate delicacy of the tuna family in Japan. A major breakthrough was achieved in January 2008, when the first southern bluefin tuna were bred in captivity. This has enormous benefits to the sustainability of the species, as it could lead to reducing the pressure on wild fish stocks. It also confirms Australia's world-leading position in aquaculture technology. Another new remarkable industry is the yellow-tailed kingfish being produced in these pens off the coast of South Australia. Broodstock are carefully selected and the young fish are raised in state-of-the-art hatcheries, where a great deal of creative research underpins the industry. Out at sea, the young fish are carefully tended, fed daily and maintained in top condition. Processing is also world-class, with controlled conditions ensuring the highest quality for export. This batch of kingfish is being packed for the European market. Sold in Japan as Hiramasa kingfish, it's a delicious, firm flesh fish. Companies are also farming mulloway, a fish prized by recreational and commercial fishers. It's a popular product in local and overseas markets. Oysters are grown in 7 regions around the state. They're cultivated in fresh and rich waters, recognised for their purity, which results in a unique quality and taste. Food safety is given very high priority, and all exports are subject to strict conditions. It's a delicious product popular in Australia and abroad. The culture of abalone commenced with land-based farming. Now, the in-sea farming of abalone is emerging as a new type of aquaculture. This ingenious farming system maximises growth of algae for the abalone to feed on, representing another example of sustainable aquaculture practice. Not all the aquaculture products are grown at sea. Land-based aquaculture is an important part of the sector, growing products such as these marron on Kangaroo Island. They're a freshwater delight. Barramundi are native to Australia's northern waters, but successful growth of this aquaculture industry has provided a consistent supply of quality fish to domestic and commercial markets. No wonder barramundi is a delicacy around the world. The success of South Australia's aquaculture requires high standards and strict environmental compliance. Government and research agencies are constantly monitoring the health of the marine environment and at the same time increasing the scientific knowledge to ensure South Australia stays at the forefront of sustainable aquaculture practices. This is supported by a legislative framework, ongoing monitoring and continued investment in research and innovation. In the end, it's all about the taste, and the quality and consistency of South Australia's seafood products continue to attract high praise.
So that was a snapshot of the aquaculture industry, and one of the emerging species now is seaweeds. Whilst Australia has traditionally not been a seaweed consuming nation, in the last 10 years or so, the opportunities with seaweeds have been identified to be quite significant. We are now at a point in history where the seaweed industry is going to take off, and there's a significant investment both from the private sector as well as from the South Australian government, as well as the Commonwealth government, which makes it very interesting. So from Saudi's perspective, there is a very big focus now on seaweed cultivation and developing into products which are of significant interest to the industry. We have developed ecosystem services such as bioremediation, and develop products or develop biomass for products such as bioactives, nutraceuticals, cosmeceuticals, as well as functional food, which is now gaining momentum. And very recently, plant-based proteins. And we have developed in-house technologies to increase the plant-based protein content in seaweeds by about 55%. Why seaweed proteins? Because it is one of the non-allergenic sources of proteins. If you take any other plant-based sources or seafood or meat-based protein sources, people have allergies to them, while seaweed-based proteins are non-allergenic. The next video will highlight the work that we are undertaking, and one of the work that we are undertaking is with CH4 Global. The next video is about AgTech in South Australia, and there is a very significant component about the current collaboration with CH4 Global. Thank you, Rhonda.
The South Australian Research and Development Institute, or SARDI, is the South Australian State Government's primary industries research provider. We do research across crop sciences, livestock sciences, aquatic sciences and food sciences. Our aim is to undertake applied science that then helps increase the profitability and the resilience of the industries.
The overall purpose of SARDI is to grow South Australia's primary industries and also ensure that our resources are sustainably utilised.
So the state government's got 5 research farms across the state, from down in the southeast to up in the northwest. They're all in different sorts of climates and they all undertake different sorts of farming activities. So all we want South Australia to be is we want them to be the farmers of the future. We want them to adopt AgTech. To do that, there's 2 things we need to do. We need to de-risk the AgTech for the farmers so they'll take it up, but we also need to attract the best AgTech in the world. And part of the demonstration farms is an open expression of interest process where we're getting applications from all over the world to demonstrate the technology on our farms. So the best possible technology that's available at any time can be shown in South Australia, can be available to farmers across South Australia for their consideration.
Here at SARDI Aquatic Sciences, we're now working with CH4 to understand more about the growth, reproduction, physiology of the red seaweed that we have off the coast here. So we're working with them to support a greater understanding of how to propagate seaweed to a commercial level and how to grow them under conditions to increase the concentration of that compound that we're interested in, that bromoform. The global livestock production of methane rivals that of transport. So if we can reduce that by this supplemental feed through red algae, then it would have considerable benefits to the economy, not only in South Australia and Australia, but more globally.
I will now pass it on to Rhonda. Rhonda, we now go with Adam.
Thanks, Sashi. And as you saw in the video, CH4 is collaborating really strongly with SARDI to commercialise Asparagopsis. So here is Dr. Adam Main, the General Manager of CH4 in South Australia, to talk about where they're at with that and some exciting new developments, I'm sure.
Good morning, everybody. It's fantastic to take a step back and look at something like this morning and see people from all around the world tuning in to understand a little bit about aquaculture, but also the opportunities in South Australia. I'm an aquaculture futurist, so for me, seeing those videos this morning just reiterates for me the importance of developing an aquaculture industry for the globe, but it also makes it quite clear to everyone that there is a tremendous opportunity in South Australia to get into aquaculture, to try new species, and to do that you need support to be able to come into the state initially, and then you need the research on tap to be able to follow through and make your venture successful to the conditions that we have here in South Australia, which are both diverse, unique, and there is, I suppose, in the easiest possible way of saying it, there's a lot of space that is available to aquaculture here in South Australia. So the amount of species, or the focus is almost limitless. We have a number of endemic species here. I'm all about seaweed, but we have a number of other fish species, shellfish species, but numerous seaweed species that have opportunity here for South Australia. I think that instead of going on the details of what CH4 is trying to do, there's videos and things that I can provide anybody after the session today. It's more about bringing everybody together on some collective thinking about seaweed in general, and then the opportunity here in South Australia. I really commend Erin and Rob and Cascadia for bringing together like-minded people around the world to talk about seaweed, to talk about aquaculture, to talk about opportunities to expand the aquaculture of seaweed around the globe. Sometimes you have a vision for your local area, but it's also really important to look at those opportunities around the globe where you can share your risk or expand your business model. So for us at CH4, the original intention was that New Zealand was going to be the focal point for the growth of our industry and the growth of our seaweed. It wasn't long before they realised that the potential in South Australia was so great that now the epicenter is hovering over South Australia rather than New Zealand. So as we grow, we're doing a lot of the testing and the trialling, the scaling, and the failing at the same time in South Australia, and then we're replicating and twinning those learnings and that research into other parts of the globe, including Canada, North America, Fiji, and a whole range of other places in between. So South Australia at the moment is the engine room, and we share that knowledge out on a sort of a red thread throughout all our other operations. I think that feeling a part of being a community with aquaculture, or having true collaboration with aquaculture, is essential. And in South Australia, the support of both DTI and SARDI, it enables that. We need to be working together to solve the big issues for seaweed aquaculture. There's no room for ego, and there's no room for fighting over every small piece of ground. And the team here in South Australia has been really supportive of CH4 to work with other potential interested parties that want to get into the aquaculture space and the seaweed space particularly. There's a lot of mistakes that have been made by aquaculture historically, and the legislation, the regulatory framework here in South Australia is basically constructed in such a way that those mistakes will not be repeated in South Australia. We have a unique opportunity to develop a brand new industry looking at seaweed aquaculture without following the same path and the mistakes of the previous aquaculture companies that sort of have paved the way. So economically sustainable, ecologically sustainable, workforce development, engagement with local community, all of these things are at the forefront for aquaculture here in South Australia. Social license to operate is to be lost with seaweed. It's very front of mind. Working with people like SARDI, the team in SARDI helps us demonstrate that we have science in our corner. Having support from the state government is also absolutely crucial. So the other side of things that I suppose in terms of the actual operations and the people that you get to meet and work with here in South Australia for Seaweed, we have an absolutely strong Indigenous heritage, more so than many other states in Australia. And one of the partnerships, or one of the decisions I should start with, that we made as a company was to engage with the First Nation people, or the Indigenous Aboriginal custodians here in South Australia. It was one of the first decisions we made when thinking about the opportunities here in South Australia. We began a conversation with Clinton. Clinton's joined us here today. He's an elder for the Narungga Nation Aboriginal Corporation, also the CEO. It was an easy conversation to have with Clinton. Clinton has, I'm speaking on his behalf here, but Clinton has a very keen focus on fishing and aquaculture, and seaweed aquaculture is an opportunity that was just too good to pass up to introduce to Clinton in my previous role as General Manager of Aquaculture. So we started a conversation almost 2 years or a year and a half ago about getting a Indigenous group here in Australia to be the leader in scaling up Asparagopsis cultivation. So for Clinton, we can get to maybe ask him some questions in the question time. I'm just conscious of time, but for Clinton and CH4, it's about the opportunity to develop a brand new industry, an industry that has many positives. It has a positive marine ecosystem effect. It is a synergistic aquaculture with finfish. It's also an income generator in remote and regional parts of coastal communities in South Australia. Sometimes it's not about the profit. Sometimes it's about the regenerative nature of the activity. Sometimes it's just about having an activity in a place where unemployment is extreme. So our conversations are quite varied in terms of how we want to grow the industry. In some places, it's about regeneration. In other places, it is about working with existing aquaculture to make a very profitable and safe industry. Just conscious of time there. Rhonda, how am I going? I could keep talking for hours, but you better check me. Have I got any more time to talk about the landing pad? I'm going to keep talking while Rhonda's trying to tell me to shut up. So the landing pad opportunity for us attracted CH4 Global into South Australia to establish a specific company here called CH4 South Australia. The landing pad has given us the ability to engage with a whole heap of local experts in terms of everything from legals right through to PR. The landing pad also afforded us the opportunity to get some space in the research facility to be able to undertake some of the early activities that we needed to get over the line with understanding what the barriers and what the opportunities were for scaling up the aquaculture venture that we're specifically interested in. Rhonda, you're there?
Yeah, sure, I am. Thanks, Adam. That's really great to hear from you with regards to your progress. So we've got some time for some questions now. But briefly in your presentation, engagement with the local community, and I know that we have Clinton. So I was just wondering if you could briefly outline to us about the opportunity for your people with working in seaweed, and in particular about focusing on the viability of a sustainable industry rather than just operating for profit.
So Sashi and Clinton, I think it got quite broken up. Was that broken up for you guys as well?
Yeah,
It
was
okay,
broken up. But
I think the question was viability versus profitability there, Clinton.
Yeah, thanks, Rhonda, Adam. First thing I'd like to do is acknowledge First Nation peoples that are involved in this link up today, and all the other people from around the world that's here. viability versus profitability is something that governments and others misunderstand. For my community in particular, we have 4th generation unemployed people, but we were the first fishers and aquaculture people in this state. And so we're saltwater people. We've been anxious to be involved in the industry. There's probably a 200% turnaround on the cost to government and in the viability, because once you take a person from long-term unemployment and get them in sustainable employment, they become a wage earner. They become role models. They actually pay taxes. They give a return to the local state government in GST because of the increased buying power. So when we talk about opportunities to get Aboriginal people involved in an industry, the measurement is not just on profit. It's the viability and the impact on the community, the impact on the family. And so there's a lot of winners all around when you look at the impact on the community. We're pretty grateful to CH4, SARDI, and the South Australian government for the opportunity. We secured the first licenses to farm the Asparagopsis species in South Australia, and we're working in partnership pretty closely with SARDI, and every step of the way we're looking at how the business plan and the model that we have in South Australia with the Narungga peoples, how that can be replicated across South Australia and Southern Australia in terms of other Aboriginal communities that have access to seed and have high unemployment, and the return that we produce is beneficial for everyone, not just the Aboriginal community. Profit is nice to have, but taking people who are 4th and 5th generation unemployment into sustainable employment and career paths in something that they love, which is to do with the ocean, is very important, and we're grateful for the opportunity, and we see enormous benefit for our community, for the local region, but for the non-Aboriginal community who will be no doubt working closely with my community, because everything we do it in conjunction with the local community, and to have state and federal government support is very useful. Thank you.
Can I jump on and thank our panelists for sharing all of this wonderful information? I can't help but appreciate the parallels between the value system of Cascadia seaweed and that of CH4 and the South Australian government. It just warms my heart to know that there's other people out there that believe in generating wealth for their coastal community and partnering with their Indigenous community and using profit to lift people up and generate prosperity for their communities. So that is so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that information. I have a couple of questions that have come in. Can I ask them to you now? Is that okay, panel? So how long has the South Australian government been part of the seaweed conversation?
I can, Rhonda, do you want me to jump off on that one? She's got a bit of internet connection issues there. Yeah, so in my previous role in government, it was my job to try and grow aquaculture in South Australia. So aquaculture globally has had extraordinary growth, but it's also hit a plateau, to be honest, in terms of the species, in terms of they're up against massive issues, social license, the space. So for me in South Australia, it was finding a new way to do aquaculture and finding an aquaculture that was not only neutral impact, but actually positive impact to the planet. So I got introduced to CH4 by chance, And from that day, probably 2 years ago, I started selling it inside government, and that's not an easy thing to do. Someone with my enthusiasm doesn't tend to do so well in government. However, as a result of basically putting it on the map, we have now been recognised in the South Australian Climate Change Action Plan. CH4 is specifically mentioned as a solution to the climate, one of the climate change initiatives of the state government. We've had significant investment in terms of ag tech. We've had support from, this is very much to do with Clinton, from the Premier, so the Premier being the highest level public bureaucrat in our system, right through to the Minister, and then all of the supporting parts of government. So seaweed is now on the agenda in multiple government departments as a solution, from blue carbon for the Department of Environment right through to transport, and then in between all of the primary industry portfolios within government, and now have seaweed on the radar. So it's a seaweed state. That's my goal.
So how long has this taken, Adam? How long have you been working on this?
Oh, I'd say 18 months would be to 2 years but the momentum's now growing. So all we had to do was start the ball rolling. And the next most important step is to show scale and scalability. Once we demonstrate scale and scalability, the way I say this to Sadi, to Sashi and Clinton specifically, is, for me, Asparagopsis is going to punch the hole in the wall for seaweed in South Australia. And I hope there's 10, 15, 20 other species that come flowing through that utilise the water space in South Australia that's just currently being underutilised. So I'd love to see greens, reds and browns on every single aquaculture lease, the virtual rainbow of seaweed on every aquaculture lease, making as much profit, having as much positive effect as we can. And the potential is here definitely to do reds, greens and browns. No problems at all.
This is so excellent to see the South Australian government investing in this future. It just checks so many boxes of our of what we need right now, of climate, of jobs, of Indigenous reconciliation. All of those boxes are checked with this new form of aquaculture. It's so exciting, and it's so exciting to see the South Australian government recognize that. So for someone who's trying to get government attention and investments into growing a sector in British Columbia, any tips?
Yeah, well, I'll let Sashi speak. I'll just do a quick one from being on the inside. Yeah,
I was just going to highlight that the seaweed growth started in 2006. Prior to that, there was a very renewed push in the South Australian sector on microalgae production, which is still continuing. But the seaweed work started in 2006 with a primary focus on bioremediation of effluents from certain carbon and nitrogen constrained industries. But then that led to further collaboration with celebrity chefs, resulting in production of products from cultivated seaweeds, food products mainly cultivated seaweeds, and it has grown from there to where we are currently with CH4.
That's a good point, Sashi. Sorry, I was speaking specifically from I was being selfish there and talking from Asparagopsis for the last 18 months. Sashi's been doing this for a long time. So apologies, Sashi. In terms of getting government on side, it's not easy. It's a lot of people think that we are not going to be able to reach scale. A lot of people don't understand seaweed. A lot of people don't think that it can be done. A lot of people don't understand it. People think that we're farming it in the sand at the bottom of the sea. So I suppose it's education, and it's not giving up on that education. It's about drawing similarities between existing aquaculture in the good parts of the existing aquaculture. So you can show you're not doing anything that's not already been done before, but it's then really important to show, although it's been done before, you're going to do it better. And by doing it using existing technology, your actual output is going to have a positive effect rather than a negative effect. So I found the balance of showing it's not that different, but it is really different, if that makes sense. It's to get the foot in the door. It's using off-the-shelf technology, existing technology that will be changed over time, but the effect of using this particular species is positive, positive, positive. That's the best advice, I think.
And time is not on our side. We have to invest in these new technologies to propel us forward, that's for sure. So with an eye on the time, would you like to add some further last minute comments or anything from the panel? Yes, Clinton.
One comment from me is that it helped to have direct access to the Premier and briefing before the Minister knew about it, and briefing on the benefits to Aboriginal communities, as well as every other aspect of it. So early engagement with the Premier and regular engagement is quite useful.
Wonderful. We are lucky to have a Premier that lives relatively close to our headquarters. So I will continue that engagement. Thank you for that tip.
I'll offer out to any of your viewers today or anyone subsequently over this week, if anyone's having a battle with a regulatory system or wants to have some experience to a different regulatory system in regards to how do you allow for aquaculture, I've been involved globally with aquaculture, and I find that the system here in South Australia is very contemporary. It is very one-stop shop. I've been lecturing people in New Zealand, Fiji, other places around the world on the regulatory system here in South Australia. There are some slow patches, but there are also some very progressive initiatives that have been undertaken here in South Australia. So I extend out my contact details to anybody that wants to talk to me about the regulatory space and how do you navigate it.
That's great. Adam, would you mind putting your email address in the chat box for our guests for easy access?
Doing it right now.
Great. Okay. Any final words from the panel? Rhonda, I know you're having some internet troubles, but did you have anything to add? Or Sashi, maybe did you want to jump in, Sashi?
Yeah, I think Rhonda was going to add the final comments, but Rhonda, are you there?
She's gone off.
We have an exciting
I saw in one of the videos, Sashi, that we've got 10 gigabytes of connectivity here in South Australia for our internet. Clearly not working this morning, but that's okay. I think look, Rhonda is our case manager, and I'm going to speak on her behalf because she's got connection issues. It wouldn't be possible for what we've achieved without Rhonda's support. So if you do have an interest in coming to South Australia, you'll be assigned a case manager like Rhonda. So Rhonda has been there from the genesis right through to today, organising me having a spot here today. We've been able to put investment portfolios onto websites. We've been able to be connected to Japan, Middle East, UK. There's not a region of the globe that we haven't been introduced to through our case manager here in South Australia. And I suppose the last comment, conscious of time, is I look forward to working with other seaweed people here in South Australia. So when you're ready, come and see me and I'll take you around and show you what we've got going on, and I'll show you all the available water space. So come over. And
as a closing comment, I just want to make a very exciting announcement, which I was hoping Rhonda would do. We are in the process of, or by this afternoon, we will be signing a memorandum of understanding with Cascadia Seaweeds and Sadi. And that will go live on air at some stage. We will put the recording on air when this MOU is signed. So we're very, very pleased to develop this collaboration between Cascadia and Sadi, and look forward to having a presence in South Australia soon.
Well, there you go. It's happening already. That's fantastic. Good news. That's fantastic, Sashi.
The wonderful thing about this industry is it is collaborative, brings people together from all over the world with a sense of hope, a hope for the future, which is really, really wonderful. I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us from the future to our Seaweed Days Festival and our first Seaweed session today. I'm going to pop a link in the chat really quickly for the rest of our events happening over the 7 days of Seaweed. And we look forward to seeing you all online. Thanks, everybody.